My favorite character in all of Wuthering Waves has finally got her rerun. Now, obviously, Brant is the new character to pull for right now, but if you have pulls left over, I would highly recommend pulling for Changli. Not only because she works really well with Brant, but in my opinion, she is the most versatile character to have in the game. So if you've been looking for an updated Changli build guide, I got you. I'm excited to talk about her, so let's not waste any time and dive right into it. If you are debating on pulling for her, her strengths do include being extremely flexible. Whether you want her as a main DPS, a sub DPS, or with a Quickswap team, she is extremely versatile. Number 2, she can buff her own damage just by stacking her Forte, which is very easy to do. And number 3, her combo-oriented gameplay allows for a lot of attack options. Like I said, going back to the Quickswap stuff, being able to have that, her parry is very easy to proc as well. She also has some unique combat roles. First up, being a main damage dealer with having higher resonance skill damage, but on outro, she also buffs fusion and resonance liberation damage. And here are all the materials you're going to need to get her up to max level. Ring material actually drops from humans, specifically the Exile faction, so make sure when you're going to farm them that you're doing the Exile ones and not the Fraxis ones. The flower you need is the Pavo Plum, which can be bought at the pharmacy in Jinzhou and can also be found at these locations, but a real easy way is just by using collection spots, which shows you exactly where you can pick some up. And for your overworld boss material, you're going to have to fight the Infernal Rider for the Rage Tacit Core. For what skills to prioritize upgrading first on Changli, her Resonance skill and Forte circuit are definitely at the top. Then I do your Resonance Liberation, then your intro skill, and then lastly your normal attack. And here are all the materials you're going to need to upgrade these skills. The easiest way to get the Metallic Drip material is by doing the Forgery challenge, specifically the one in the 1.0 area, because the rings that you'll need also drop from this too. And for your Calamity boss material, you're going to have to fight Jiwei here in Mount Firmament for the Sentinel's Dagger. To maximize Changli's potential, we need to understand exactly how her kit works. First, let's talk about her Forte Enflamement. There are 4 stacks. As you can see, there's 4 different sections under her Forte bar, and you gain a stack every time you get a hit with either True Sight Conquest or True Sight Charge, or if you decide you want to use your Resonance Liberation, you automatically get 4 stacks. And there are 2 different ways to get True Sight, so you can perform either the Conquest or the Charge attack. The first way is by using your normal attacks, which have a variety of combos. You have a basic attack 4, a mid-air attack 4, both your heavy and your mid-air heavy attack follow up with the respective attack 3s that lead into the 4th attack. But the main thing to note is that after your basic attack and mid-air attack 4, you enter True Sight, which you can see it pop up above her Forte bar. And the second and the most easiest way to gain True Sight is just by using your Resonance skill. Now, I know there's a lot of flavor text here with True Sight Capture and all that. Basically, the main thing you need to know is that, number 1, you get 2 charges of this Resonance skill, so you can spam it. But do take note that when you initially use the Resonance skill, you'll dash toward the target upwards, you'll gain True Sight, and then you'll do a plunging attack back toward the ground. Now, once you have True Sight, this is where you have your choice of using either True Sight Conquest or True Sight Charge. With True Sight Conquest, as long as you're on the ground and you use your basic attack button, she'll dash forward, dealing fusion damage considered, Resonance skill damage, and True Sight will end. And with True Sight Charge, if you use the jump button or the basic attack while you're in midair, that is where you'll perform this attack. You'll turn into a Phoenix, dashing up toward the air, dealing fusion damage considered, Resonance skill damage, and True Sight will end. Now, just to reiterate 2 things. Number 1, True Sight only lasts 12 seconds, which is really a long time, and you're definitely going to use it within that 12 seconds if you're in battle, in my opinion. And the second thing is that you actually have to hit a target with one of the True Sight attacks to gain an Enflamement stack, so keep that in mind. Also, as a bonus, with her first inherent skill, Secret Strategist, when Changli releases the True Sight Conquest or Charge attack, for each stack of Enflamement, Changli's fusion damage bonus is increased by 5%. Now, coming back to the Forte circuit, once you have 4 Enflamement stacks, you can perform the Heavy Attack Sacrifice by holding down your basic attack button. This will consume all stacks of Enflamement and is essentially an AoE skill, dealing fusion damage considered, Resonance skill damage, and Changli takes 40% less damage. Now, coming back to the Resonance Liberation real quick, again, you'll deal damage with it, you'll get all 4 stacks of Enflamement you need, and you'll enter what's called Fiery Feather. With this, as long as you release the Heavy Attack Flaming Sacrifice within 10 seconds after using your Resonance Liberation, her attack is increased by 25%, after which Fiery Feather ends. So basically, as long as you use the Resonance Liberation and then follow up immediately with that Heavy Attack Flaming Sacrifice, you get an attack percentage bonus. And as another bonus, with her second inherent skill, Sweeping Force, when you cast that Heavy Attack Flaming Sacrifice or her Resonance Liberation, it gives a 20% fusion damage bonus and ignores 15% of the target's defense when dealing damage. I do want to talk about her intro skill, Obedience of Rules, because she appears in midair and automatically gains True Sight, which means you can follow up with that midair attack, the True Sight Charge, and pretty much automatically parry the enemy. So if you can time this up right, it's essentially a free parry. That's the one thing that I really like about Changli's kit, is that her normal attacks, her resonance skill, her Forte circuit, and her intro skill are very easy ways to parry targets, considering the amount of attacks that happen when you use these skills. Now for her outro skill, Strategy of Duality, like I mentioned, the incoming resonator will have their fusion damage amplified by 20% and their resonance liberation amplified by 25% for 10 seconds or until the resonator is switched out. And for her left and right stat bonuses, we get a crit rate percentage bump and an attack percentage bump. I'll talk about this a little more when I get to the damage rotation part of the video, because there are a couple of other things I do want to cover, but essentially all you need to know is use your normal attacks, use your resonance skill. Heck, when the intro skill happens, use the True Sight, charge attack, use True Sight Conquest if you're on the ground, get those 4 stacks and use that Forte circuit. And if you use your Resonance Liberation, use your Forte circuit as quickly as possible. This is how we're going to get all these fusion and attack damage bonuses and also ignore a lot of the target's defense. For Changli's weapon options, I would highly recommend pulling for her signature weapon, Blazing Brilliance. You get a flat attack and a crit damage percentage bump, and with this perk, Crimson Phoenix, not only do you get an attack percentage bonus, note this is at rank 1, so it's 12%, the wielder gains 1 stack of Searing Flame upon dealing damage, which can be triggered once every 0.5 seconds, and gains 5 stacks of the same effect upon casting the resonance skills. So we get 2 of those resonance skills, means we can stack this up real fast. Each stack of Searing Feather gives a 4% additional resonance skill damage bonus up to 14 stacks. After reaching the max stacks, all stacks will be removed in 12 seconds, which means once we reach 14 stacks, we get a massive resonance skill damage bonus for 12 seconds. If you decide not to pull for a weapon, the standard 5-star Emerald of Genesis is a decent option as well. You get a flat attack and a crit rate percentage bump with this perk, Stormy Resolution. Note this is at rank 1. It increases your energy regen by 12.8%, which can be good if you have her as a sub-DPS, but when your resonance skill is cast, it increases your attack by 6%, stacking up to 2 times. This effect lasts for 10 seconds. If you don't have any 5-star sword options, don't worry, there are a couple of 4-star ones you can use. The first one being Commando of Conviction. You get a flat attack and an attack percentage bump, and with this perk, Unyielding, when you cast your intro skill, you get an attack percentage bonus lasting 15 seconds. If you're dealing with a lot of enemies, Lunar Cutter might be a good option. You get a flat and an attack percentage bump. With this perk, Preordained, the equipped resonator gains 6 stacks of Oath at the beginning of the battle. Each stack increases your attack by a percentage up to those 6 stacks. The equipped resonator loses 1 stack of Oath every 2 seconds and gains 6 stacks upon defeating an enemy. The next sword would be Endless Collapse, where you get a flat and an attack percentage bump again, and with this perk, Intergalactic Gaze, when you cast your resonance skill, it gives you resonance energy and an attack percentage increase lasting 16 seconds. This effect can be triggered once every 20 seconds. The last sword I'll mention is an event exclusive from the 1.4 update, the Somnoir Anchor. If you don't have this sword, don't worry about it, but if you do, I would look into using it, especially if you have it at rank 5. You get a flat attack and an attack percentage bump. With this perk, Meow, you gain 1 stack of Hiss when you deal damage to a target. You get 1 stack every second. Each stack increases your attack by 4% for 3 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. That's a 40% attack increase over 10 seconds. If you switch off, it clears those stacks, so you definitely want to stay on the field. When you gain 10 stacks, it increases the wielder's crit rate by 12% as well. For Changli's best echo sets, you actually have 2 options, the first one being a main DPS and the second one being a sub DPS. If you want to use her as a main DPS, use 5-piece Molten Rift. At 2 pieces, you get a 10% bonus to fusion damage, and at 5 pieces, you get a 30% bonus to fusion damage for 15 seconds after releasing your resonance skill. Now there's 2 ways to set this up. The first way is by having your main 4-cost be the new Nightmare Inferno Rider with either crit rate or crit damage as the main stat. Your 2 3-cost echoes should either have fusion damage or one with attack and one with fusion, and your 2 1-costs should be attack percentage. The second way is by having 2 4-cost echoes, the main one still being the Nightmare Inferno Rider, but the second one being the normal Inferno Rider, each with either crit rate or crit damage as the main stat, and then for your 3 1-cost echoes, attack percentage. I understand Inferno Rider is cool, especially with the recent Phantom skin, but the reason you want to use the Nightmare version is because all you have to do is have this echo equipped in your main slot, and you get a 12% bonus to your fusion damage and your resonance skill damage. You don't actually have to use this echo to get these bonuses. Now, if you want to use Changli as a sub DPS instead of a main DPS, use 5-piece Moonlit Clouds. At 2 pieces, you get a 10% energy regen bump, and at 5 pieces, pieces, upon using your outro skill, it increases the attack of the next resonator by 22.5% for 15 seconds. At your 4-cost echo, you're going to want to use the Impermanence Heron with either crit rate or crit damage as the main stat. With your 2-3 cost echoes, you're looking for fusion damage, and for your 2-1 cost, attack percentage. Now, the reason you want to use the Heron as your main echo, whether you tap the button to do the slam attack or hold it to fly in the air and spit fire, once the initial attack lands on any enemy, the current character regains 10 resonance energy. If the current character uses their outro skill within the next 15 seconds, the next character's damage dealt will be boosted by 12% for 15 seconds. For your echo substats for both the main and the sub DPS options, we're looking for crit rate and crit damage, resonance skill, attack percentage, and then lastly some energy regen and then flat attack. Now, going over Changli's best team options, we have a lot of characters that she is good with, so let's first talk about the free-to-play team with Chishia and Baija or Verena as your healer. This is if you want to use her as a sub DPS specifically, because with her buffing fusion and resist liberation on outro, that's going to be good for Chishia. Or if you want to go for a little more of a hot swap team, you could use either Spectro or Havoc Rover as well. If you wanted the double DPS team, pairing Changli with Brant and Shorekeeper is obviously going to be good. With Shorekeeper giving the healing, the crit rate, and the crit damage for both Changli and Brant, that's going to be good. The quick swap between them is great, and they both buff each other with their outro skills, which is nice. But if you don't have Shorekeeper as your healer, remember, Brant does heal, and you could also throw in another DPS character potentially, somebody like Sanhua, for example, which will buff the basic attack damage for Brant, and then Brant leading into Changli, Changli back to Brant. You can kind of see how the combination goes. For Changli's premium teams, using her as a main DPS, pairing her up with Zezha and Shorekeeper is going to be great. Shorekeeper, healing, crit rate, crit damage. We already talked about that. With Zezha, not only does she have the coordinated attacks, but she does buff resonance skill damage on outro, which will be good for Changli. Or if you want to replace Zezha with somebody like Yinlin, for example, considering she also buffs resonance liberation damage on outro, they could kind of buff each other, and you still have the coordinated attack damage from Yinlin. And lastly, some Changli quick swap teams, pairing her up with Lumi and Shorekeeper is going to be good. Don't even talk about Shorekeeper, we already know that. Lumi, for example, also buffs resonance skill damage at a higher percentage than Zezha, so that's going to be great for Changli, and having the quick swap between those two is pretty good, especially with Lumi's S6. When using her resonance liberation, the whole team gets an attack percentage bonus, which is very nice. And a more premium option, if you want to use Changli as a sub DPS, pairing her up with Zhang Liao in Shorekeeper is good. A lot of Zhang Liao's attacks are considered resonance liberation damage, and since she buffs resonance liberation damage on her outro, that's going to be good for him. And the quick swap between them is very nice when he has his resonance liberation active. Now that we've talked about Changli's skills, weapons, echoes, and what teams to use her on, let's talk about your damage rotation. If you use any skills prior just to build up some resonance energy or her concerto, that's totally fine, but the main thing is using the intro skill, and while you're in midair, using the true sight attack so you can parry a target. If you're not parrying a target, that's totally fine as well. I would try to use this attack in midair though, so you're not just hanging out there. After that, your main goal is using your resonance skill, using your basic attack 4, your midair attack 4 to get true sight so you can use those charge and conquest attacks so you can get those enflamement stacks. Once you have all 4 enflamement stacks, use the heavy attack flaming sacrifice to do the AoE and gain the variety of bonuses and the skills like I mentioned. Now, one thing you can do during that first part is that if you have your resonance liberation, I would recommend using it sooner rather than later, just so you can get the bonuses from it with the attack percentage stuff. So use the resonance liberation, immediately follow up with the heavy attack flaming sacrifice to get those damage bonuses. And when your concerto is about to be full, be sure to use the Heron if you're using it as an Echo sub DPS. The good thing with the main DPS with the Nightmare is that you don't even have to use the Echo to get the bonuses, so that's why I didn't have to say anything with that. But if you are using her as a sub DPS, use the Heron first, then use your outro skill, switch to the next character. In all reality, her kit is very easy to understand. Use attacks, get true sight, get enflamement, big AoE attack, damage bonus, ignore defense. Now, I do want to talk about quick swapping real quick. Like I said, I think she's one of the most versatile characters when it comes to this in particular, especially with the resonance skill and that true sight conquest attack on the ground. One thing I like doing that's very easy is that whether you use her basic attack to get true sight or resonance skill, I really like using the resonance skill because obviously it's a lot faster. If you use it, you plunge to the ground, whether you use the charge, which is the midair attack, or the conquest attack on the ground, during the teleport when she goes toward the target, you can actually switch to your other character during that, and she still deals damage to them. Now, if a parry is coming up, I will use the charge attack to swoop up toward the enemy to parry him, and then while that's going on, switch to my next character because it will still parry, which is very nice. But you can still use the charge attack since she's on the ground. It does do 3 hits of damage, which is nice. If you want to understand quick swapping a little more, there are definitely plenty of videos out there that can help teach you, but if you would like me to make some sort of guide, definitely let me know in the comments, because I do use it as a part of my playstyle when I use Changli specifically, and a couple other characters too. The last thing I want to talk about is Changli's Resonance Chain and whether it's worth getting multiple copies of her. Her S1, Hidden Thoughts, her Resonance skill, and that heavy attack Flaming Sacrifice increase Changli's damage dealt by 10% and resistance to interruption. Her S2, Pursuit of Desires, Enflamement increases Changli's crit rate by 25% for 8 seconds. If you can play this right, which is very easy to do, you pretty much have a permanent 25% crit rate bump during battle. Her S3, Learned Secrets. Her Resonance Aberration damage is increased by 80%. Her S4, Polished Words. After the intro skill is cast, all team members' attack is increased by 20% for 30 seconds. Again, that's for the whole team. Her S5, Sacrifice Gains. The heavy attack Flaming Sacrifice's multiplier is increased by 50%, and the damage dealt is increased by 50%. And lastly, her S6, Realize Plans. Her Resonance skill, the heavy attack Flaming Sacrifice, and her Resonance Aberration ignore an additional 40% of the target's defense when dealing damage. Overall, I'd say her S2 is a must-have. After that, 3 and 4 are okay, and S5 and S6 are very good. With S2 giving a 25% crit rate bump for 8 seconds and being able to reproc it just by gaining Enflamement is pretty much just free extra damage. The S3 giving the Resonance Aberration damage bonus is nice, and the S4 after using an intro skill the whole team gets an attack percentage bonus, that's pretty good too. But the S5 giving the massive multiplier to her Forte circuit attack is insane, and being able to ignore an additional 40% of defense with the S6 with, you know, the main skills that she uses is just insane. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is my updated 2.1 Changli build guide and kit breakdown. For my final thoughts and just a little bit of story time, if you recall during the 1.1 update, first half we had Jinshi, you know, the new character, cool dragon animations. In the second half we had Changli, and I was debating on whether I should pull for either one of them. I was like, you know, Jinshi's pretty cool, but then we played the story and we got to use her kit and her animation, and I was like, we have to have her. With skipping on Jinshi, maybe not the brightest idea, sure, but I am so happy that I was able to get S2 Changli, and she's easily one of my favorite characters to play in the game. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is there something that you like using on Changli? And let me know how your Changli pulls are going. And or are you pulling for Brant? Again, their team combo is very nice, and I have a Brant build guide and kit breakdown coming out very soon. Fortunately and unfortunately, I'm guaranteed on my next character that I want to pull for, so I am still debating on whether I want to pull for Brant or not. I'm at 40 pity on both the limited character and weapon banners, and we got the drip marketing for Cantarella, and she looks fantastic as well, so I don't have enough pulls for all these characters. So if you'd like me to do more pulls, do the following. In any event, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that bell next to notifications so you don't miss out on any other Wuwa content we have dropping here on the channel. If you didn't know, we live stream here on YouTube and then also over on Twitch. That link will be in the description. At the beginning of a new update, we have Twitch drops available, so if you're trying to get some Astrite and some extra materials, definitely stop on by. Lastly, if you want to flex your pulls, your echo rolls, some gameplay, definitely join my Discord. We have a Wuwa channel specifically for that content, but we also have a variety of other channels in there, including PC Tech, anime, and more. Lastly, if you want to help the channel even more, you can look into becoming a member. Now, if you don't know what a membership is, it's essentially like a Twitch subscription, but it's technically cheaper. You'll get access to emotes, monthly badges, and the big ticket item, all of my long form videos early. So if you'd like more information, all you have to do is press the join button next to subscribe, and then I'll give you a rundown with all the details you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been your boy. We'll catch you in the next video.
Sweetie, protect the